Hey guys, Mr. Enyart here with Lesson 9 from Topic B in Module 2 for Grade 6, Sums and Differences of Decimals. Now I'll tell you the most important skill you're going to want to have on all of these, besides the ability to find equivalent fractions, is understanding our place value chart. So I've put this up here for you to take a picture, do whatever you want with, but here we have a place value chart that goes all the way to the millions. Here's our decimal point, so our ones place, which means the digit just to the right of the decimal point is called the tenths. And over here we happen to have 3/10. So notice when we say 3/10, that would be a 3 in the tenths place. And here we have 77 hundredths, and this is called the hundredths place. So I can't put a 7 and a 7 in there, but the one 7 will stay, the other will move over. So 77 hundredths is the same as 7 hundredths and 7/10. So what I want to do to make this a whole lot easier for me, instead of finding like denominators, because they are already both decimal denominators, meaning they're tenths or they're hundredths, I just rewrote it like this: 25 and 3/10 plus 376 and 77 hundredths, which is exactly how I read this problem: 25 and 3/10 plus 376 and 77 hundredths. And right away I notice that a 0 should be here, because 3/10 and 30 hundredths is the same. And now I can add up my numbers. So 3 plus 7 is 10. I need to drop my decimal in the same spot. And 6 plus 6 is going to give me 12. And then that's going to be a 10, and that's going to be a 4. So my final answer is 402 and 7 hundredths. So if we want to write this as a fraction or as a mixed number, we would write our whole number, 402. And then notice that this is in the hundredths place, this is in the tenths place, and I'm not going to say 0, so I'm going to say 7 hundredths. And there you have example 1. So now let's take this into example 2. Example 2, you'll notice that these fractions, these are not tenths or hundredths. I don't have a place value for fifths or a place value for halves. So what I want to do is I want to get these to tenths or to hundredths. And I notice right away, because I know my multiplication facts, that 5 can go into 10 and 2 can go into 10. So what I'm going to do is just rewrite both of my fractions off to the side and just write them as equivalent fractions to tenths. So those who've been following my video know that I always have a phrase: how do we make equivalent fractions? We multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same factor. So how do I get from 5 to 10? That is correct. It is times 2. So therefore I will take 1 times 2 and get 2. And then down below, how do I move from 2 to 10 with multiplication? Correct. It is times 5, and therefore what will I do to my 1? Times 5. So I end up with 5/10. And now I can rewrite my problem as a decimal, because 1/5 is equal to 2/10, and 1/2 is equal to 5/10. And now I have a place value. So I'm going to write it as 426 and 2/10 minus 275 and 5/10. And at this point, it's just a matter of subtracting the way we know how to subtract. I cannot do the 2 minus the 5 here, so I'm going to borrow from my 6 next door, make it a 5, and my 2 becomes a 12. And I can do 12 minus 5, which is 7. Then I have to drop my decimal, my and. I can do 5 minus 5. 5 minus 5 is 0. But here I cannot do 2 minus 7, so I have to go next door and borrow from my 4, making it 3, and then the 1 can come in front of the 2, making it 12. 12 minus 7 is 5, and then 3 minus 2 is 1. So my answer is 150 and 7/10. So I could rewrite that as a fraction, as 100, or as a mixed number, 150 and 7/10. So I'm going to leave this up here for you to use if needed. This is a great tool, of course, to have. But then I'm just going to work through one or two of these. And notice that on this one it says to find each sum or difference. But down here it says use a calculator because, finding a way to get sevenths or ninths to hundredths or tenths or eighths to hundredths or tenths doesn't work out evenly. And to do it on a calculator, it's pretty simple. You simply understand the fraction as a division sentence. So if we zoom in and we look at 3/7, that means 3 divided by 7. And 5/9 would be the problem 5 divided by 9. So in a calculator, there's a few ways we can do this. So I'm going to grab my calculator here, and I'm going to start with 3/7 that you see there at the top of the screen, which of course is 3 divided by 7. Hope those numbers aren't backwards. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to get a number like this, and it says to round to the nearest hundredth. So it's 0.428 or 428 thousandths, which is going to round it to 0.43. So I'm going to write my new number is 422 and 43 hundredths. And then I can subtract away my 367 and let's figure out what 5 divided by 9 is. So I'm just going to clear it out. I'm going to do 5 divided by 9. And I'm going to get a whole bunch of 2s. Sorry, those are 5s. A whole bunch of 5s. And of course, 5 will round it to 6. So it's going to be and 56 hundredths. And then I can go through this problem. All right, so I've done that one down here on that video. I'm going to now do question D, and then I'll be done. So we should be able to, find our decimal points based on making our fractions into tenths or hundredths or thousandths, some multiple of 10, so that we can put them into our base 10 place value system. And that's just finding equivalent fractions for ones such as this. And we're just going to leave this one alone because it's already in 3/10. So let's change 632 and 16/25 to 632 and a certain number of hundredths because we want 25 to go up to hundredths. And as always, to find equivalent fractions, we multiply the numerator and the denominator. We could also divide, but in this case we're multiplying both of them by the same factor, which is times 4, and therefore times 4. That's going to give me 64 hundredths. So now I can rewrite my whole problem into 632 and 64 hundredths plus 32 and 3/10, which of course just leaves a little 0 here, right? Little 0. I'm just going to draw it in as an imaginary 0, and I go through the adding process. So a 4 there, a 9 here, 2 plus 2 is 4, 3 plus 3 is 6, and that leaves me my 6. So my answer is 664 and 94 hundredths. So again, I hope you memorize and know this place value chart. It is part of our number system and very important. And then, of course, the process of finding a sum or difference in decimals based on fractions, getting them to tenths or to hundredths.